Hi everyone, it's Janet and welcome to my channel. This episode is part 1 of 10 cards made with the My Monthly Hero December kit from Hero Arts. Today's cards will be in a variety of sizes and will show you many techniques ranging from beginner to advanced level. December's kit is all about fairies and mice. In part 1, I've concentrated on the fairies using Zig Clean Color markers. In part 2, I'll work on the mice using Spectrum Noir markers. So let's get started with a look at what's in the December kit. This is how my package came this month, with a few little extras, including this thank you stamp set that Hero Arts sent out to the subscribers, and it has a few more of the mice images and sentiments. I also picked up this set to seize or not to seize. It has some snarky sentiments that I wanted, like I can't adult today, tomorrow's not looking good either, but it also has some nice sentiments like live in the moment and some other things, life is beautiful and so on. So this was just something I wanted to get and just finally picked up. Then I also got the Starlight Starbright Bold Prints stamp. I thought this would be really fun to use in galaxy backgrounds, and so I'm going to have some fun trying that out. Alright, well, the main kit came as usual wrapped in paper, and inside we have this beautiful ribbon around the whole entire kit. I like this purple ribbon, or lavender is maybe a better word, and it's wide. It's much wider than most of the other ribbons that they typically send along. So I thought this would be fun for making some great bows and things. You know I like bows if you watch me. So the first littler packet here includes several half sheets of glimmer cardstock. One of the items included this month is a Jelly Roll Stardust Clear Glitter Pen, and this puts down a lot of glitter and shine. I'm going to use some black cardstock and write on here so you can see just how much glitter and shine it puts down. It's really pretty, and this is a great addition to your normal card making kit. It's a great add for your stash. Also included are some flat sequins called Moonshine Confetti Mix. These are beautiful. And then we've got 8 shimmer cardstocks. This one I believe is called Misty Rose. Then we have Lime Gold, and it's quite green. Then I think this one is called Breeze. It's very light. It's almost white, but I think it has just a touch of pink. And then we've got this gold called History. Interestingly enough, they don't seem to sell it on their website. So I don't know, maybe they'll add it sometime in the future. Now here is the stamp set and the coordinating dies. So you can see there are lovely images here of fairies and also of mice, and then we've got some great sentiments as well. They're nice size this month. They'll take up some good real estate on your card bases. We also have some dandelions, which is kind of a nice segue for both fairies and mice. As is the case every month, they've sandwiched the dies and the stamp set between a piece of double-sided cardstock, and there's some beautiful images on this month. These dandelions are gorgeous. And then some just general plant fauna on the front of this one. And I'm definitely going to use a piece or two of this in my cards this month. Now here is the full steel dies that came, and there's one for every single image, so that is just awesome. There aren't any dies for the sentiments, but that is typical for the Hero Arts kits. To supplement this month's kit, I'm going to use the Really Rainbow 6x6 paper pad and also the Knock on Wood paper pad. These are both from Lawn Fawn, and I really like the colors. Thought they'd be great for fairies. My first card is going to feature this very large daisy image, and I'm going to use the Zig Clean Color marker set that I recently bought. It's a set of 36. I'll put a link to it if you want to find it and order one for yourself. It was reasonably priced, better than I've ever seen over the Thanksgiving holiday. So I thought I would try these out. Now they are water based, so they're kind of watercolor markers, but I thought I would just use it on plain white cardstock. This is marker friendly, or alcohol marker friendly ink cardstock, and it worked just fine. I didn't have any issues with it bleeding or not blending. So I think the moral of the story is these can be used on other things besides watercolor paper, which I was sort of afraid that might be the case. So quite pleased to find they work very well on my alcohol ink friendly papers. So I just used 2 colors to color them up. I'm using 2 more colors for the center. And the last touch on this was Gold Wink of Stella This is not the clear, but the gold Wink of Stella pen, and I just used it to highlight some of the petals and the center. Next, I am coloring the sitting fairy image, and primarily I'm using 2 Zig color markers for each area of her clothing. And you know, these are somewhat small images, so I find 2 is enough to use for some subtle shading. I am not that talented at shading to begin with, so I wouldn't want to try to use more than 2 in such a small area. But I put the colors that I've used for each part of her on the screen here, so you can replicate this if you'd like to. This was the best color I could come up with for the skin. I think it's okay, but you know, maybe you guys have another Zig Clean color marker that you have that you like better for skin. I'd love to hear that if you do. Alright, so I'm finishing her up with some final bits of shading. I put a little pink in her cheeks and then also used the Jelly Roll pen on her wings, which is really pretty. Gives those wings a magical touch. So now that I've finished the images I'm going to use, I'm going to prepare my card base. This is a 5x7 card base, and I've cut a piece of that history cardstock using a border die, and then I'm using another piece. This is the, I believe this one is called the Breeze. It's the very light, almost white piece. My 5x7 card base was made with a shimmer cardstock from Die Cuts with a View. Now, I did get a little bit of glue seepage, so I'm showing you how I used my adhesive eraser, which I've had for years, but it did a great job in taking off that excess adhesive that had seeped through my paper. Now I'm going to take 3 squares and I'm going to place them centered on my card base. The first one will be exactly in the center, and this again is using some of that really rainbow paper, and I'm putting one in the middle. Now this is my ruler that I use for centering. It's a Tim Holtz ruler. It's been around forever, but you'll see that I'm using the marks on that ruler to figure out where I should put my 3 pieces. So I started with the first one exactly in the center using the 0 as my mark, and then here I'm going to quickly point to you where I am using my centering marks for the right one, and then similarly I'll do the same on the left. And this, although I am, you know, still eyeballing it to some extent, really helps to make sure that the spacing is similar and the height is similar, and most importantly of all, it's centered enough to look right to the eye. It may not be perfect, but it works well. Alright, so I'm going to apply the daisy image now, and I put that on foam tape, and then I'm also going to put the fairy now sitting on top of that flower. So I'll have foam tape behind her wings and body, but nothing on the legs because that's going to be even with the flower. She's starting to look pretty. I'm going to use these Moonstone confetti mix throughout my cards in this video, but I put them there in those 3 boxes, and then I also heat embossed in gold, sending happy fairy wishes your way. So I think she is pretty cute. And here's a close-up of the finished card. Card 2 is the smallest of the cards I'm going to make. It's 3x3 using the really rainbow paper pad as the card base. I noticed this sentiment sending a tiny hello in the thank you set, and then I also saw this tiny little image of a ladybug holding a dandelion, and I had to use it on a small card. So I also created then a double mat for my sentiment, and I also cut out 4 strips of paper. The center strip comes from the Really Rainbow pad, and I'm using this circle embossing folder on it. This is the woodcut paper on wood embossing folder, and then this is a Tim Holtz kind of scripty words using the Misty Rose shimmer paper. So I went ahead and ran everything through the embosser, and I'm going to start putting this card together. Now, just because this card is tiny does not mean that it is boring. All the different embossing folders here really give it some interest and make it special looking. And you don't have to use these embossing folders. Anything that you have in your stash would work just fine. You also don't need 2 different embossing or even 3 different embossing folders. You could use just 1 or 2 and it would work equally as well. I'm just fortunate I have a lot of things to choose from in my stash that I've collected over the years, so I pull them out in times like these. Now here is the last strip that's going to go across the middle of the card. It almost looks like a belly band at this point, but of course it is not. It is a top folding card and will open from the bottom. I heat embossed the sentiment on a tiny little square of that Misty Rose shimmer paper, and it says that's sending a tiny hello. The whole sentiment with the scalloped mat on here is only 1.25 inches. The sentiment square is only 7/8, so it is teeny tiny, which fits the theme, right? So I'm going to put the sentiment itself up on some foam tape, and then I'm going to take the little ladybug and cut out a tiny little square of foam tape to fit behind him so that he can be the same height as my sentiment. And I'm going to set him so that his flower or the dandelion is resting on the sentiment. And I think this is so cute. A little bit of glue here to make sure it's attached to the sentiment square is a good idea. And then because it's so small, I have used my tweezers to kind of figure out placement. Get my fingers out of the way so I can see. And here is the finished card. I just think it's so cute. It's so tiny and so much fun. Here's another close-up look at it. So I'm going to start card number 3 by stamping 3 images from the set onto the white alcohol ink friendly cardstock here. This is sized 4.5 by 6.5. This is ultimately going to go on a 5 by 7 card base. So I'll ink that up using Memento ink. That won't run when I'm using my Zig Clean color markers on it. And there it is. Doesn't look like too much yet, but I promise you it's a nice card when we're done. So I've moved ahead a little bit. I colored the mushroom and the ladybug using reds and browns and grays. And I also colored in the skin of both fairies. And now I'm going to work on the wings. I did the flying fairy with some pinks like I did on the sitting fairy earlier. But I'm making the wings on the fairy that's laying down quite differently. I'm using several different colors in this case. I started with a blue, a lavender, a bright pink, and then a very pale pink, and I just kept blending over the tops of where the colors met, and the end result was really quite nice. You'll get to see in the close-up how pretty these got, but I wanted to show how I did them in particular in case you wanted to try to recreate that yourself. They're just lovely. Love them. This is probably the most complicated of the cards I have in this series just because there's a lot of coloring, and I'm also using masking here to finish up the scene. I went ahead and cut out some masking to put over my colored images. This is done by stamping the image on a piece of paper. In my case, I use some post-it note paper. After I cut them out, then I apply the Zig 2-way glue on the back and let it dry. And this makes the pieces removable. They'll stick very well, but you can remove them very easily and it won't harm your image underneath when you remove them. So I got this all laid down, and then I brought out some oxide inks. The first one I'm going to use is peeled paint, and I will go ahead and place that toward the bottom of my card panel. This of course is to represent the grass that the fairy is sleeping on. And I will go ahead and use these brushes. I've got some brushes that I bought, I think it was at AC Moore, and they're Martha Stewart blending brushes. I would recommend them, although I'm still hunting for the perfect brush. These do shed a bit when you're using them. I'm moving really fast here so you can't really see that, but it does shed, and I hope that after some use they'll quit doing that. It doesn't harm your product. It's just you have to stop once in a while and brush off the bristles that shed off. Now for the sky area where the fairy is flying, I did use some broken china and also some faded jeans, and then at the bottom I'm adding some pistachio. The pistachio and the peeled paint together create a bit of a darker green. I wanted to give some additional dimension down at the very bottom, so that worked well to do that. Now this looks pretty splotchy and ugly right now, but I find with the oxide inks, as they dry, they get smoother looking, and you'll see that it will smooth out, and the actual finished card is really quite pretty with these backgrounds in it. So you'll see that I'm peeling off the masking here. This one stuck a little harder. There might have been a little piece of it or an area that hadn't let dry fully, but I was able to remove it without harming the image. And I'll take that ladybug off, and now suddenly it's looking a lot better. I did find that there was a little bit of white border around the flying fairy, so I just used a light gray pen from the Zig Clean marker set and filled in around the edges. It gives them a little bit of a shadow, and then I went ahead and also put in some additional shadow where she was laying and also underneath the mushroom. So I maybe overdid the shadow for the fairy. I mean, it looks okay. I probably could have used a little bit less under her head there, but hey, it's a learning process. Again, I don't claim to be really good at this. I'm learning as I go with shading and coloring as well. It's not natural to me. My sentiment is stamped with Onyx Black, and it says "Never Stop Dreaming." Well, I'm going to prepare the 5x7 card base now. I started with a blue cardstock, and then I'm going to use some of this silver glitter paper, which actually came with last month's kit, and I had a little left over, so I applied that on as a matte. And now I'm going to put the panel that we just colored on top of that, and that makes a nice look with the glitter and then the blue background. Now I'm going to use some of the moonstone sequins, and I'm going to apply them in a way so that it looks like this is magic fairy dust that she's dropping down on this sleeping fairy, just to make sure she has some good dreams. And that finishes up card number 3. Card number 4 uses this large 5x7 bit of paisley Cuttlebug folder, and I've taken the lime gold cardstock and fold it in half. This will make a perfect A2 size card. And I'm going to place this on my Gemini cutting pad. This is the large electric Gemini embosser, and this is good for this sort of application where you need a larger cutting pad in order to get the image the way that you want. I usually use my Cuttlebug for most things, but in cases like this where I want the embossing to go from edge to edge cleanly, there's just a little that overlaps there. I need to use a bigger pad, because if I just fold it over like this and put it in the Cuttlebug, I will get an edge to that embossing pattern. I don't want that. All right, so I am dying to use this wide lavender ribbon, so I put the ribbon behind my card base and put little marks so that I could mark the width of the ribbon. I'm going to lay this down and use my cutting knife to put a slit in that will be approximately the same size as my ribbon. This will allow me to insert the ribbon through the slit, and then I can tie a nice little bow knot on the front. This will create a much cleaner look than trying to cut the ribbon and then gluing it down. Sometimes if you have a panel, you can definitely do that so that you glue down your raw edges behind and no one can see it. But in this case, it's definitely going to be seen. So I wanted to make it a clean look. And this is pretty too, because when you open the card, you're going to see the ribbon on the inside as well. So I'm going to move this ribbon over so that the knot is going to be to the far left of the card, or in other words, right next to where the card fold is, because I'm going to use everything to the right of that for my panel. Now here is a panel that I cut using the History shimmer stock, and then I used a bit of this yellow wood grain card stock from the Lawn Fawn set or card pad. And then I went ahead and previously stamped and cut out some of these flower images. Now in addition to dandelions, there's an image of what I think is a rose. It could be a carnation, I'm not really sure. I'm treating it kind of as a rose, but it really doesn't matter. I colored that up using some reds and pinks, and then I also cut out 2 of the images where we've got a rosebud. Again, I think it's a rosebud. It doesn't really matter, but I used yellow and orange primarily for these 2. I thought it was a nice contrast. And this is a simple botanical card. There is no sentiment. It can be used for anything, and I really love how that turned out. And here's a finished close-up of card number 4. All right, on to card 5. This is another smaller card. It's 3 by 5.5 inches. I cut the card base out of white, and then I applied a piece of the Breeze shimmer cardstock to the top of it to match. Then I cut out some of that cardstock, the printed cardstock that came with the kit, and focused in on that large seeded dandelion. I think it's so pretty. And then I put a strip, a very narrow strip, it's a 1/2 inch, of the Misty Rose across the entire card panel image. I heat embossed with black, Have a Dandy Birthday, and this came from the thank you set as well. Now, this is going to go on the rose colored strip, and then I've cut out with the History Gold Shimmer paper the Flying Fairy using just the die. So this is a good example of how you can use the dies to create silhouettes for your card making. And I love how that looks as well. You don't have to always stamp everything. So there you go. She is doing her fairy magic thing to the dandelion, and I think she looks great. Now I'm just showing you quickly how I applied the moonstone sequins using art glitter glue and my little sticky pen there, and that finishes up the card. And here is a close-up of that final card. Well, that concludes part 1 of the My Monthly Hero December 2018 card kit, part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Well, once again, thank you for joining me here today. I really appreciate you visiting, and I've put up here the link to subscribe to my channel and also to a couple more videos that I think you might be interested in seeing if you like this one. So I hope to see you back soon, but until then, keep crafting. Bye!